NightMerica is an independently produced podcast. If you like what we're doing, please consider supporting us at patreon.com/NightMerica. And please tell your friends about us.
Welcome to NightMerica, a podcast that takes you on a tour of the abnormal, paranormal, weirdly true, and truly weird in every corner across this nation. Because, to paraphrase Ray Parker Jr., whether it's ghosts, aliens, monsters, or monstrous humans, there's something strange in your neighborhoods.
Episode 24, Nightmare at 30,000 Feet. I'm your co-host Aaron Sagers from Travel Channel's Paranormal Caught on Camera, joined as always by my cohort, Britt.
Britt. Hello, Nightmericans.
Britt Emmy.
That's me.
And see, I just said your name that time, so you didn't have to awkwardly then say it, not knowing
I'm
if I was
never
going
going to
say
nail
it.
this greeting. I think we just need to move on from it. I'm always going to make it weird.
One of the lovable foibles of NightMerica is not being able to properly introduce ourselves within the first 15 seconds of the show.
Yep.
An intro is kind of difficult.
It's awkward.
Because, well, and more or less awkward than goodbyes. Goodbyes are pretty awkward.
Yeah.
Like when you say, goodbye, bye, talk to you soon. Okay, talk to you soon.
Oh, or when you say goodbye to someone in person and then you both walk away to the same place. That's awkward.
Oh, that's very awkward. Yeah. Like, well, I'm just going to walk this way. Have you ever just hung back and been like, I'm gonna just let them go.
Oh,
so I don't
always.
have to keep walking.
Always.
Yeah.
Especially like on first dates that end weird. Yeah.
Well, so if it's not a weird date, then it could be like a charming little, ha ha ha, look at us. This is our meet cute moment. We're walking in the same direction.
Yep.
Yeah. I find goodbyes perhaps even more awkward when I'm wrapping up something like if I'm hosting something and saying goodbye to people, there's all these talking points that you have to get out messaging, like, and don't forget, tune in, or hey, and if you can, click on this link, and but there's also the just final moment of like, okay, bye now, go on.
It's true.
Or when you hang up with your parents, like, I don't know how your parents are on the phone, but it takes 20 minutes to hang up with my parents.
It takes 20 minutes and no one can just like outright say we're done. So everyone's like, all right, well, all right. And now when my 2-year-old niece, Sydney, hears the word all right, she immediately goes, bye. Like, even if you're in the middle of conversation, you're like, all right, well, maybe. And she goes, bye.
You know what? Just bye. She's done. She's done.
Yeah. And my one grandma just hangs up the phone.
God, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I'm talking to my parents, it's a lot of like, okay, well, I'll talk to you later. Well, I just wanted to check in on you. Well, yeah, okay. There's a lot of wells.
Yeah.
So, okay, great. Well,
all right.
Well, okay. Well, okay, well, bye, okay, well.
It's so true.
So I sometimes just like, I gotta take this other call, and that's a good way to go.
Yeah, that's a good way to go. Plus, then you look interesting, like you have a whole lot of other stuff going on.
I don't think my family cares about me looking interesting.
Ouch.
I really don't think that's something that they're interested in.
Yeah.
Interested in my interestingness. Anyhow, so this is a paranormal and true crime podcast. I'm glad we're talking about parent stuff. It's good. It's relatable.
It's good. My parents listen. They're going to laugh.
Good. People out there, how do your conversations with your loved ones wrap up?
What's your trigger word? You're well and you're all right.
Are greetings more awkward than goodbyes? You let us know. It's a hot topic. But speaking of hot topics, we're going to be talking about, as the as the title suggested, Nightmare 30,000 feet. So we're talking about airplanes. But before we get into that, let's touch base with some news of the weird. Britt, what is your topic, your weird topic of the week?
Well, I'm realizing
Or news topic, I guess.
I
Sorry, interruption.
found this article, but now as we're talking right now, I realize it connects to planes, which I didn't even think about. So this is funny.
Eerie.
Eerie.
Spooky.
A woman was traveling, and the police in this Munich airport where she was had a very interesting day earlier this month when they had to inspect the wooden box that she was transporting. She was.
Ooh.
Did,
I'm excited. Go on.
okay. So she was a 74-year-old woman. And when they went to open the box, they found.
Wait, can I guess?
Yeah, guess.
Wooden box? Gosh. I want to say severed head or some sort of antique sex toy.
I wish. They found bones.
Okay.
So close to your severed head, but they found just like dusty old bones. And immediately a customs official was called in. Prosecutors and a doctor were all called in to look at this box of bones. They all were investigating it, digging into it. They finally determined that this woman wasn't a criminal, but in fact a grieving widow. She was on her way from Greece back to Armenia and had a layover in Munich. And she stated that her husband had been buried in Greece years ago, but she wanted to bring him back to Armenia to be laid to rest near their home. So the police said, okay, and sent her on her way, which I'm sure is true, but also seems like a very convenient cover-up if they did actually kill someone.
Yeah, typical old lady cover story.
Totally.
So, wait, so she dug up those bones?
She dug up the bones.
There's got to be some sort of, now I'm no expert on Greek law, but it seems like there should be some sort of rule against just randomly going and digging up even a loved one.
That's how I feel. It's like grave robbing. Even if it is your own people, you can't do that, but maybe you can in Greece. Or maybe they just had a small funeral when he died in a backyard somewhere like you do for a pet. I don't know.
It's more like grave relocating instead of grave robbing.
True.
So let's adequately explain what this woman did. Yeah, also, so if it could not have been all of his bones.
I have no idea. They just said it was a wooden box. I didn't see any pictures.
That's not even fair. She's leaving some bones in his original grave and taking. No, you don't get two graves.
No, that feels uncomfortable in the afterlife. You would be a torso and an arm in one, and then some legs in your other arm in another.
I was just thinking cheating. It's makes it more convenient for mourners to grieve at bi-coastal locations, so you don't have to go through all the work of actually going all the way to Greece. I don't know, but although Jane Mansfield has two grave sites, only one has her remains in it, but she has a grave site in Pennsylvania, which is where she is from, and then also a memorial in the cemetery, the famous cemetery in Los Angeles.
The Hollywood Forever Cemetery?
Yeah, that's it.
That's my favorite song by Father John Misty.
Cool. I don't know the song, I don't think.
I'll send it to you.
Please do.
Okay.
So, okay, well, yeah, I feel like there's a trend. Maybe all this time we've been looking at these lone wolf type of creepy people as suspects for crimes, but maybe we need to be looking at some little old ladies.
Right? That's what I thought when I read this story.
So I think, I think we need to, not that I'm advocating profiling, but maybe we just need to keep an eye on the little old ladies.
True. I mean,
so innocent.
In retail, the shoplifters that I've experienced are almost entirely old women.
Oh, well, yeah, it's been a long time, but when I worked in restaurants, I mean, I worked in retail too, but I don't recall any little old lady shoplifters there. But in restaurants, it would be the older folks, especially the little old ladies, that would always steal the salt shakers
It
and
was my
other stuff
grandma.
off of the table. Yeah.
It was
I mean,
100% Graham, who also hangs up the phone immediately.
because she's in a hurry to go
Yeah,
steal from
totally.
restaurants.
Totally.
I mean, I never would stop them because occasionally when I worked there, again, this was a long time ago, a manager would be like, "Hey, try to stop that." Like, no, it's an old lady. If she wants to steal a salt shaker, let her have it.
Yeah.
Well,
In
if
her
she wants
purse,
to
she's got
carry,
salt shakers, ketchup, sugars,
yeah,
all of
if she wants to transport bones internationally, let her do it. She's a little old lady,
it.
so I'm not going to stop her. Anyhow, well,
Anyhow.
my news item, I picked this. So Pentagon establishes new task force to investigate UFOs.
I almost did
So
this with my story, and I was like, I can't. Aaron's going to do it. I got to find something else.
yeah, well, I pulled the link from Politico, but really this is just all over the place. That the Pentagon, under growing pressure from Congress, quote unquote, has established a new high-level body to investigate reports of unidentified aerial phenomena, aka UFOs, following recent years of multiple incidents of crafts that have been seen over military airspace. This was created by the Deputy Defense Secretary David Norquist on August 4th. And, quote, the Pentagon said, quote, the Department of Defense established the UAPTF. Feel like they could have gone with a catchier name.
Yeah.
UAPTF to improve its understanding of and gain insight into the nature and origins of UAPs, also known as UFOs. Guys, you're not going to change this. It's not going to
Yeah.
catch on. Stop trying to make UAP
Stop
happen.
trying to make fetch happen.
Exactly. And so I do want to say this is interesting news, but there's a but here. But I don't know. It's interesting news, but it's also like in light of current political
Mm-hmm.
events, maybe we should be focusing on the post office
Oh,
and
I
getting
was
elections right.
just going to say that.
And I'm all about looking into this stuff, but it's just sort of a little lower on the priority list for me right now.
Yeah.
So, we're recording this in August, and August 17th and 18th, and hot topic right now about the post office.
Yeah.
Let's get that right.
Buy some stamps. I highly recommend the Halloween stamps. They have them all year round. It's what I use. If you are in our Patreon and you join, you get our sticker. You get a little handwritten note from me with the Halloween stamp. They're like shiny. They have cats. They're great. Buy some stamps.
Buy some stamps. Also, write to your
Yeah.
congressmen and women saying fix the post office.
Yep.
And yeah, so and fix the whole system of mailing so your grandmother can just mail the bones from her husband
Exactly.
to someone else to bury. So,
Yep.
well, let's dive into the topic a little bit. I forget how we landed on this topic. That's not an
I
airplane
was
pun.
just going to
Um,
say.
but it was on my mind because my story, which I'll get into, I was actually recently talking to Dan Aykroyd about,
Oh,
which
excuse
I know.
me.
Danny, actually. He does actually when I was interviewing him out of respect, I said Mr. Aykroyd, and he's like, no, no, no. Danny is fine.
You don't call me
So
Miss Emmy.
no, but I'm not interviewing you. If this was a formal thing, I use sir,
As
ma'am,
we've
Mr.,
learned, this
Ms.
is not a formal thing.
But Dan Aykroyd was talking a lot about the story, which I'll be going into, and it's just, it lined up nicely with that. But Nightmare at 30,000 feet, do you know that reference? I
Um,
mentioned it earlier.
you told me before we started recording that it's from the Twilight Zone, so Yes, it's from the Twilight Zone.
Do you remember, do you have any awareness, or kind of have you absorbed through osmosis, pop culture osmosis? This is a big one. This is a big Twilight Zone episode that you should watch.
Well, you and
Um,
I, when the first Twilight Zone, or not the first Twilight Zone, when the newest Twilight Zone revamp came out, you and I watched one where it was on a plane.
oh, did we watch that episode?
Was
Yeah, I
that the
recall
episode we're
that
talking
we,
about?
yes, so yes. Well, yes and no. So the original Nightmare at 20,000 feet was directed by Richard Donner, who was a big director in the 80s.
Of the Donner
And
Party?
no, actually, I don't know if he had
Jokes.
any connection to it, but he did direct Superman and The Omen, which is more in
Mm.
our paranormal wheelhouse. And so that was a 1961 episode, I think, or 63 episode, starring William Shatner,
Oh, great.
written by Richard Matheson, who is just an acclaimed sci-fi and horror writer. But the whole thing is that it's a guy in a plane and he sees a gremlin, which was a guy in a big carpeted suit, it looks like, in the 1963 episode, on the wing of a plane. And as he's trying to tell people there's a freaking gremlin on the wing of the plane tearing up crap, everybody thinks he's just cracking up. So they try to give him drugs, they try to restrain him, and then at the end of the episode, as he's wheeled off of the plane, and they say, "Oh my God, he's crazy. He's going to the loony bin." They pan out, and there are scratch marks and everything on the wing of the plane, so he was not hallucinating the whole thing. And then in the Twilight Zone movie, which was in the 80s, I think 83, um, so like 20 years later, it was another gremlin. But then the episode that we saw in 2019, Nightmare at 30,000 feet, uh, I didn't really like that one as much.
I don't
They didn't
remember
go with
it.
they didn't really go with the gremlin theme, which is okay. They went with Adam Scott from
Oh, that's
Parks and
right.
Rec. They went with him having, like, discovering this podcast, or discovering this
Yes.
player. I don't know what it was, but like it looked like a kind of an old iPod
Mm-hmm.
in the back seat of his seat, back seat of his seat, the back pocket of his seat.
Yeah.
And then he hears this podcast that's playing, like, this very eerie kind of prescient thing, saying that the plane he's on is going to go down and all that.
Yeah.
And he starts to go a little bit crazy too. Anyhow, so that's why we went with that title. It's a great episode. It's one of the ones that if you ever watch an old Twilight Zone episode, you definitely have to check out.
All right, I'll watch it.
When was the last time? Well, you were on a plane recently.
I was on a plane recently. I escaped New York during COVID to go to Phoenix, but I like lived on planes growing up because being overseas, like we would fly back to Chicago for summer, for Christmas. Like I was on planes 24/7. So I'm very,
Yeah.
very comfortable on planes. And my most favorite plane memory is when I had to be like 12, no, it was before that. It was maybe like 10 years old. And my family is flying back to America. And this super annoying, like wannabe bougie couple in front of us are being just real snobby. And the guy goes, "Hun, can you get the LV out of the overhead compartment?" Like the Louis Vuitton bag. My dad gets up and turns to my mom and goes, "Hun, can you get the RB out of the overhead compartment?" Because we just had a ghetto Reebok duffel bag. Oh, my dad. It's dad jokes. I love a dad joke.
It is funny. And did the couple respond?
No. I don't
Yeah.
think they heard us. We weren't that close, but it was just like an
Yeah.
inter-family joke.
I see. Which is now quotable around the dinner table, I'm certain.
You know it.
I don't know what my favorite plane memory was, but I've basically in my career lived on. I didn't first fly. I wasn't on a plane until probably 19 years old, 18 years old.
Mm.
First flight was quite late in life, but I've more than made up for it because I've traveled quite a bit and professionally spent a lot of time on planes. And my last trip was February of 2020, and I can't. It's weird not having been on a plane for all this time.
Really? That was your last flight?
February 2020.
Yeah. When you went to Queen Mary?
No, this is 2020 right now. That was 2019.
Oh my God, it's not 2021.
No,
It
time has no
feels like
meaning
it.
anymore.
Oh my God, this whole like last week I have been thinking it's 2021.
Well, I mean, essentially, we are writing off 2020, so close.
Close. Weird.
But
Let's
no,
not
yeah, it's
bypass our
still 2020.
birthdays.
No, I'm happy bypassing my birthday
Why?
because this year was so unnoteworthy that I'm just fine, like, not having it.
Well, you had a big birthday last year.
I had a big birthday party last year,
Yeah.
yes. But not that I'm concerned about age. It's just that this year feels like such just ready
Weirdness.
to scratch it off.
Yeah.
But
Anyway.
so anyhow, I'll be excited to return to planes. And we'll sort of be doing that, except maybe not in the best way, because I don't know what your story is, but mine's depressing.
Mine's depressing.
So, oh, great.
If you guys are
Buckle
nervous
up.
flyers, maybe don't listen. I don't know. Should we give a trigger warning?
I mean, I don't know, but I tend to think maybe they wouldn't have downloaded it if they were going to be nervous flyers.
That's
I
true.
will say, in the podcast biz, Britt, don't typically want to tell people not to listen to your podcast.
Touche.
So,
like, I just don't want
you know.
people to like get nervous, but I guess you won't be on a plane anytime soon, so just like get over it.
And we're putting it right out there. They
Planes.
know they've downloaded a plane episode.
Okay.
We will, however, give you trigger warnings if it's something like really, violent or whatever.
Okay.
But anyhow, so let's get a word from our sponsor. Think things are bad now? Well, it could be worse. Don't believe me? Just read Dead Run, the new sci-fi thriller from author Mike Maddox. A mysterious force is taking control of people's bodies and making them run to stay alive. And if you can't keep running, now this is the ad copy, so I'm reading the ad copy because it says if you can't keep running, you blow up like spaghetti left in the microwave too long. It's not a good scene. It's a very messy situation.
And it's got to have marinara sauce because then it kind of looks like blood.
Right. And the pasta itself would be sort of look like viscera.
Ew.
And except in a microwave, but at least in a microwave, you're contained. The explosion is contained.
Yeah.
It's a messy microwave to clean up. But if you're running down the road and you can't run anymore, just splat. And then you're all over your friends and the other apocalyptic pals.
Ew, do not splat on me.
And in an apocalypse, you don't have easy access to soap, water. I don't even know if you can stop running long enough to shampoo and bathe after your friend, your pal is just blown up on you. Anyhow, I mean, this is really, I think, selling the book. Anyhow, the story follows a group of weary travelers as they make their way through a hellish landscape where there's only one rule: run or die. This is Dead Run. And other than being chilling and scary, it will also perhaps inspire you to eat the right kind of carbs and jog every day just in case this apocalypse hits. So check it out. It's available exclusively on Amazon Kindle. It's only like $3. It's well worth your $3. And read Dead Run by Mike Maddox on Amazon Kindle. Okay, we're ready to dive in. Take off.
Let's
ready
take
to
off.
Take off.
Tray tables up and seatbelts on.
And back seats forward, straightened.
Yep, seats forward straightened. Put your electronics on airplane mode, but don't unless you've downloaded this for offline play. So
Yeah. Well, no, still do it because it'd be rude for you not to put it in airplane mode. But listen, buckle up and listen. I don't know.
yeah.
Let's just go
Anyway,
with the story.
the story that I'm telling today is inspired by one of my favorite ID channel shows called A Crime to Remember. It's just like a interesting true crime show because it has this kind of like Mad Men feel. It's like a vintage aesthetic, and it's told by a voiceover that is pretending to be someone near to the case, like a neighbor. They have detectives and officers interviewed, but what I really love is they'll get like our like true crime celebrities like Karen Kilgariff on to be a talking head. The late Michelle McNamara is actually on a few episodes in I think season 4, so it's just a good show. So this is season 1, episode 4. I won't say the title because I want to kind of build some suspense. But the story starts on November 1st, 1955, when the people of Longmont, Colorado, call the police because airplane seats and luggage were falling from the sky into their yards. The majority of land being a beet farm, which I found just an interesting fun fact. This is chaos because it's 1955 and air travel was like still a really new concept. So many of the people calling had no idea what they were even seeing. Like, what is an airplane seat? They just were saying that chairs were falling from the sky, which has to be insane. Of course, police and investigators raced to the scene, and they found airplane debris spread for about 6 miles. And based on how like the debris spread, they determined that this was due to a plane exploding in midair. Immediately, they jump into action, and interestingly, they recreated the plane in a hangar. Despite the metal kind of being so twisted and warped, they were able to like piece it all back together in this hangar, which was really interesting to see the recreation of on the show. They did it so they could figure out the cause. They first thought it was going to be the fuel tank because planes back then actually used like a very volatile fuel that they don't use anymore. But as they're looking into it, they realized the explosion was actually in cargo hold number 4, meaning this was out of someone's suitcase. They realized someone may have packed something dangerous, and when looking into the remnants in that section, they found bits of copper wire that would not be part of the plane's construction, as well as a suitcase that smells like sulfur, which can occur in a dynamite explosion.
It can also be the sign of a demonic infestation.
Wouldn't that be the greatest twist if that's what caused this?
It would be quite interesting, but I'm guessing that's not where you're going.
That's not where I'm going. This is the bombing of Flight 629. That was the title of the show. I didn't want to say it in the beginning because I wanted to build suspense. The flight had 39 passengers and 5 crew members, and all 44 people died on the plane. This was before flying was really common practice, like I said. So for most of these people, it was their very first flight. And no one on the plane was of a dangerous background or anything abnormal. So right off the bat, they can't figure out, just looking at the passenger list who did it. It wasn't like a president was on board or anything. So investigators started by interviewing the friends and family of everyone on board and looked for anyone who could have had financial benefit from these deaths. At the time of the explosion, companies sold life insurance policies out of a vending machine people on the flight could purchase for themselves before boarding, which is so interesting. It was just like a little kiosk, like how they used to sell cigarettes, and you could just buy life insurance for like $0.25.
Well, this was 1955?
Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, like, I kind of believe it because while commercial aviation, really started booming post World War II, I would say that it maybe wasn't something that everybody was engaging in. So maybe there was enough of a foreboding factor to it that you're
Yeah.
like, well, I'm going to just pick up some insurance before I get on this thing hurtling through the air.
Yeah, on the show they reference it to being like throwing a penny in a wishing well. Like you throw a quarter into the machine for good luck before you get on your flight.
Oh, not wishing to go down the
Oh,
flight. I'm like,
no.
I'm like, lady, what kind of wishes are you making? I'm never traveling with you.
Um, but like literally everyone on the plane did this, so they had to kind of sort through, and nothing jumped out immediately of like red flags. So from there, they then go and figure out what is in that specific cargo hold. What's really ironic is that when they were loading cargo, one of the baggage handlers lost his keys in this specific cargo hold. So they had to remove the luggage and then only suitcases originating from Denver, because this was before planes had large fuel tanks. So it was like in Chicago and then somewhere else and then Denver. So only suitcases originating from Denver were put in that cargo hold, and they remember, because they had to pull them all out again, that it was only 3 pieces of luggage in that section, and only one of them was heavy enough to strike the handlers as odd. And that was a suitcase belonging to a 54-year-old woman named Daisy Eldora King. She boarded the flight in Denver to visit her grandkids in Alaska, and she was currently living in Denver with her son, Jack. As they were interviewing her children, Jack and Helen, investigators learned that Daisy had a really difficult life. Her husband died during the Great Depression, and to be able to work and earn money to care for her children, she had to place them in the care of other people. So her daughter was put in a religious boarding school, and her son was actually sent to an orphanage. In 1940, she remarried, and her son Jack thought, like, oh, this is, my time. This is when I can get out of the foster care system and back with his mom. But Daisy's new husband didn't want to have children, so she did not take him back, which I'm sure is a huge psychological blow to Jack. I couldn't find out why that marriage ended. I'm guessing possibly death of some kind, because Daisy suddenly came into money after that. And so she bought a home for her now adult son, Jack, as a gift. He was married, had a kid of his own, and Daisy bought a house that had a basement apartment. So she was hoping she could live there and kind of heal the wounds of their relationship. From what it sounded like to me, Daisy had to suffer from depression, maybe even PTSD from her super hard life. And they said she even once attempted suicide. And this really impacted her relationship with her son. He begrudged her for abandoning him, while she felt super defensive, being like, I was doing the best that I could with what I had. So it's a tough situation from both sides. But with this new money, Daisy bought the house and then decided to open a restaurant called the Crown A Drive-In and gave it to her son to manage as a family business. So investigators asked her children to walk them through what happened the day she was boarding the plane. They claimed that morning Daisy packed her suitcase and that she had placed ammunition in it because it was caribou season in Alaska where she was going to, and she wanted to hunt well in Alaska.
Yeah, and you wanna bring your ammunition with you because they just gouge you on
Right?
the caribou ammo on the ground. So,
Felt like a weird story.
well, not in 1955. Maybe now it's weird and funny, but
Yeah,
yeah, always pre-purchase your caribou
definitely.
ammo, or don't kill caribou. I don't know.
Don't kill caribou. Yeah, I don't know what the extinction rate is with that, but once at the airport, her luggage was weighed, and it's marked 30 pounds overweight. Daisy's shocked, but her son immediately jumps in and offers to pay the difference since she's cutting it close to the flight takeoff time. Daisy then gives Jack $3 to buy her life insurance with, and he purchases 3 different amounts in the name of his name, Daisy's sister's name, and then his sister Helen. So, interestingly, they discover in the investigation that this actually isn't the first time Daisy has been around an explosion. In September of that year, their Crown A restaurant had an explosion due to a gas leak. and they actually received an insurance payout for it. It turns out the business was losing money, and she was fighting with Jack because she wanted to sell it. He didn't, because if they sold it, he would lose his job, and then she would just profit off the sale, and he would be left with nothing. So this is making the detectives kind of connect the dots that this might be Jack wanting his mother gone. Then Jack's wife Gloria told police that the day of the plane crash or plane explosion, she saw her husband carrying a wrapped present to his mother's room. Hearing this, they decide to now search the house. It's been 12 days after the crash, and they found an insurance policy hidden behind a piece of furniture that Jack had taken out on Daisy for $30,000. So he kind of lied when he said he had only bought the 3 policies. It's like, yeah, you only bought the 3 policies from the vending machine, but separately he bought one for $30,000. They also found spools of copper wire similar to what was in the explosion site at his house. And he claimed it was from construction done at the restaurant, but the investigators pushed back, saying this is exactly what was found at the explosion. And upon hearing this, Jack Gilbert Graham confesses to the crime, stating, "I have had enough. It was pretty simple," which is kind of a motionless confession. Turns out the wrapped present his wife had seen him with the morning of was actually a bomb he had packed into Daisy's suitcase, claiming it was a gift for her. He had used a kitchen timer to stall the explosion instead of just going off whenever. It was like a old school kitchen timer.
Yeah. Which
is interesting. It also the idea of them being like, oh, it's 30 pounds overweight, and he's like, no, we'll just pay it. He has to know its time is ticking away. Upon Daisy's death, he would have earned her life insurance and the restaurant, not only making him a rich man, but also ridding him of his mother. They filed a charge against him for attempted and deliberate murder, and he was convicted in the first degree and sentenced to death. He was killed 14 months after the explosion in the gas chamber. And a few weeks after he was found guilty, the current president, Dwight Eisenhower, put an act into law prohibiting the bombing of an airline. And that's my story.
Yeah. So I have questions, though.
Great.
It is... So when you first started telling this, I thought you were going to tell the Canadian time bomb, because there was a plane brought down in 1949 that was very similar to this.
That's the one with Hale Boggs on it, right?
It
was a senator or something from Alaska.
Maybe, I don't know about that part. I know that it was the Albert Quay, or Joseph Albert Quay murder. He killed 23 people aboard a flight, and supposedly inspired, I guess had some sort of, it must sound like he had some sort of inspiration for this one, since it was not that long after. The question I have, though, for you is, so was this a separate suitcase or a package placed in the suitcase?
This was a package placed in her suitcase.
And she didn't notice.
Correct.
That this was put in there.
I'm sure,
maybe he was just helping her with the bag or whatever.
Yeah, she was in her 50s. I'm sure he just helped carry the suitcase in and all that stuff.
Yeah, God forbid someone in their 50s.
I know.
Pick up their own suitcase.
Can you pick up your own luggage? You're getting close.
Ouch. I'm not getting that close. And so I realized there weren't laws on the books at this time about airplane, murders, blowing up an airplane. But he was executed just for the one murder.
Yes.
It's kind of a ripoff.
I know, isn't that a ripoff? Like, you killed everybody on that flight. You killed 44 people. In the show, they do like a story of like who was all on the plane. There was like a mom bringing her son to meet his dad, who had been serving in the military like his whole life, and he hadn't met him. It was like, oh my God, like this guy just ruined the lives of so many people.
Yeah, that's especially monstrous. I mean, that's
Yeah.
mass murderer level, I
Yeah.
would say. Like, I mean, not that I'm endorsing, you know, placing bombs and killing anyone, but when you really care so little about people that you're willing to take down an entire plane, and that's the thing too, is it's not like he meant to kill one person and accidentally took everybody else out. Like, he set out to take out this entire plane.
Yeah. And his wife was like crying and sobbing on the day of his execution, understandably, but she was like, now I'm alone, now I'm alone. And part of me wants to be like, well, you were probably always alone if your husband is willing to kill 44 people in order to just kill his mother. Like, he probably was not a great husband.
Yeah. And and all the people that were murdered, their families are also left alone.
Yeah.
So, um, just
Icky.
doesn't sound like, and it sounds like he just had no remorse after the whole deal.
Yep.
What a dick.
What a dick.
Well, that story, yeah, it's about, I kind of knew little bits and pieces about that, but that's definitely a sad one.
Yeah. And
And
now we go from one sad one to another.
yeah, it's going to also be sad. So let's take a break with the sponsor and we'll come back with the next story. Is Brooklyn one of the most haunted places in America? It's a worthwhile question. And this podcast happens to be brought to you in part by Brooklyn's one and only mobile ghost tour, Madame Morbid Trolley Tours, which is the official haunted tour of NightMerica. So, we've talked about this before. Madame Morbid, it's a Victorian-era funeral-inspired trolley, which just sounds like a great way to cruise around town, don't you think?
The only way I want to cruise around town.
The only way. See, you're making a bold claim. You're just planting a flag in only if it's not.
You know it.
If it's not Victorian-era funeral-inspired trolley, it's
Why bother?
It's crap, according to Brit. Well, then that's why you should go on a Madame Morbid trolley tour. First chance you get, because it is the only way to cruise around Brooklyn and learn about Brooklyn's haunted history and true crime. So they are currently off the road. They are social distancing. They're chasing ghosts, but they also have gift cards available for when they reopen, which hopefully is soon. As we're recording this, hopefully we're getting close to them being able to reopen. So be sure to check out madamemorbid.com or give them a follow at Madame Morbid NYC to support your local ghost tour and our official haunted tour. And by the way, their answer is yes. Brooklyn is haunted. Okay, we're back. And this one is, I guess we're looking at 1972, so a little less than 20 years after your story takes place. And it is the story of Eastern Airlines Flight 401. Now, in normal times, there are 44,000 flights daily in the U.S. It's a lot of flights. And, you don't really think about, I mean, I fly a lot. I'm not concerned about flying. I like flying. And I don't really think about things going wrong. You just can't really control it, right? Nor should you, I don't think you should be too concerned constantly about that. But sometimes things do go wrong, and sometimes the reasons are really, I'll just say it, like stupid in their tragically stupid. So Eastern Airlines Flight L 1011-1 TriStar, the Eastern Airlines flight was a wide-body jetliner, simply known as Flight 401. It had only been in service for 4 months, December 29th, 1972. It's flying from New York to Miami. I think it departed around 9:20 p.m. Leaving the cold of New York to head to Miami, warm beaches, warm weather, and also still the holiday time, and there's the feeling of revelry and festive feeling in the air. Carried 163 passengers, 13 crew members, piloted by pilot Bob Loft and flight engineer Don Repo. So, as it was making its final landing approach to Miami International Airport, first couple hours of the flight, just mundane. And this was an exceptionally quiet plane. It was one of the people that were on board recalled just easily falling asleep on the plane, so the engines didn't make a lot of noise. But as it was making its final landing approach to Miami International Airport, they flip up the, activate the landing gear, and a light on the instrument panel that the first officer was monitoring failed to illuminate. And the pilot's supposed to illuminate green, and the pilots assumed, well, okay, the gear is probably down, but for whatever reason, it's not illuminating the signal, illuminating this light. But that's what would confirm that this landing gear was extended and locked.
Oh, God.
Didn't illuminate, but they still thought it was. Meanwhile, the pilot chirped over the comms, "Welcome to sunny Miami. Temperatures in the low 70s, and it's beautiful out there tonight." So Captain Robert Loft, he was 55 years old, 30 years of experience. It was around 11:32 p.m. They call into the tower, Captain Loft does, and says, quote, "Tower, this is Eastern 401. It looks like we're going to have to circle. We don't have a light on our nose gear yet." The tower replied, quote, "Eastern 401, pull up, climb straight ahead to 2,000, go back to approach control." So the plane climbed to 2,000 feet, and the captain ordered the first officer to turn the autopilot on. Now, their hope was to, by circling, they would have a delay that would allow them to fix this lighting problem, and the crew tried to replace this bulb on the instrument panel. It was sort of this all-in-one kind of unit that you take out, this little rectangular thing. And as they were trying to replace it, it kept jamming. I can imagine a bit of the commotion as this was happening. You know what it's like. You're just trying to, fit something into, and maybe you knock something else. Well, that's what happened. The captain accidentally bumped the control wheel, which deactivated the autopilot. The plane dipped a few degrees, but nobody noticed. And then it started dropping from the sky 200 feet each minute. An alarm chirped when there was a 250-foot drop. However, nobody noticed because they were trying to replace this indicator. This indicator, by the way, that cost $12, approximately $12.
Oh, my God.
It's just at 11:42 p.m., 10 minutes after they first tried to activate the landing gear, 11:42 p.m., the first officer was recorded saying, "We did something to the altitude." "What?" asked the captain. We're still at 2,000, right?" the first officer asked. "Hey, what's happening here?" the captain shouted. Then silence. They were flying over the Everglades, and went down, and the left wingtip banked into the swampy marsh of the Everglades at 227 miles per hour. The plane, as it started to, it was crashing and separating. It was pinwheeling through mud and the vegetation of the Everglades, and it created a quarter-mile long trail of debris. Now, the Everglades, even now, but especially at that time, I would say, were some of the most unforgiving terrain, at least in the country, possibly the world. It is very wild down there. There's sawgrass that can just slice your hand open.
Oh,
There's poisonous snakes.
Jesus.
There's alligators. And this thing went down into the water, and a fireball blew through the fuselage. There was an enormous flash of flame. 2 fuel tanks burst open, and 2 pilots, not on this plane, but other pilots had seen this, and they called the airport. 25 miles away, Game Warden Gray Leonard actually saw what he said looked like gasoline poured on a campfire. Gray Leonard is one of the people that's part of this story, because this game warden goes and meets up with some FAA representatives, and they hop in an airboat and they start heading to this site that's deep in the Everglades. And he actually told Flamingo magazine, a South Florida magazine, in 2018, I believe, that when he arrived, he has a really gruesome story about discovering 2 bodies, and the blast had basically blown off their clothes, and it's quite gruesome that he came upon these bodies so quickly, and you can't hit brakes on an airboat. There's no such thing as brakes, really.
Oh, God.
And he actually went over these poor bodies,
Oh.
but he went on to tell Flamingo magazine, quote, "This was one of those moments where there aren't enough words in the dictionary to describe the devastation. Dead bodies hung, lay, and floated everywhere I looked. But we knew our job was to rescue the survivors first. There would be plenty of time for body recovery." So they were focusing on gathering survivors. Meanwhile, stewardess, they were still called stewardesses at the time, Beverly Raposa, was only 25 years old, this young
Oh.
woman. She woke up in the plane, burned from jet fuel, and suspended 6 feet above this marshy water. She drops down into the water, and she begins gathering up survivors and trying to lead them out of the wreckage.
Oh, my God.
And even during this time, there was quite a bit of time that was passing, and imagine just this scene of horror and wreckage all around you, and people that are clearly dead, some of them your loved ones. People were scared, and then people didn't think anybody would find them because, again, of this terrain. And she recalled that there was even people asking about the alligators around them, and she just said that, "Oh, well, I'm sure the blast probably scared away the alligators," which hopefully it did. She also eventually started singing Christmas carols, because again, this is the holiday season, to try to
Oh, my God.
assuage fears, and she was gathering up these survivors and getting them out of there. Meanwhile, there was also another man who he was someone that saw this on the ground, saw this this devastation, saw the crash, and actually took his airboat as well, like into the waters to try to recover anyone he could. So there were some heroes. Richard
Yeah.
Marquez was he was like he laid carpet. That was his job, his career. But he is known more as a hero because when he saw this flash of light, he went out into the Everglades and tried to gather up survivors. But it took nearly 4 hours for all of the survivors to be cleared out. There was 101 fatalities. 98 people died in the Everglades where the airplane crashed, and 3 later died in hospitals. So, major tragedy, just terrible.
Yeah.
And both the Bob Loft and Don Repo died in this crash as well.
Bob Loft, not to make light of the situation, but it kind of makes me think of in Arrested Development, the lawyer, Bob, what is it? Bob Oblaw's law firm.
Yeah, Bob Law.
His law blog, Bob Oblaw's blog.
Yeah, played by Henry Winkler,
Yeah,
correct?
it's a great character. But okay, I'm sorry. They could not sense that the plane was going down?
Not until it was too late. So I apparently it was this gradual drop, and then by the time that they realized it, it was too late.
God.
I mean, they were only at 2,000 feet.
I
So
don't
if you're
know what that
dropping,
equates to.
well, if you're dropping at 200 feet per minute, in 5 minutes you've already dropped 1,000 feet.
Okay. This is
In 10 minutes you've dropped 2,000. And keep in mind that this initially occurred so when they activated the landing gear, 11:32 p.m. And at 11:42 is when the first officer said, we did something to the altitude. These were the final words. We did something to the altitude. What? We're still at 2,000, right? Hey, what's happening here?
Oh.
10 minutes. So that about tracks. If they're dropping 200 feet every minute, 10 minutes later, So this tragedy made a lot of news. This was huge. I believe this was the first wide body flight that had gone down, or wide body jetliner. But 1973, early 1973. So only a month, 2 months later, a flight from Newark, New Jersey to Miami, an Eastern Airlines flight. There was a pilot that was deadheading, which is when they're on a plane, they're not working, but they're flying home off the clock. This pilot was in full uniform, but not on the manifests. Flight attendant goes and asks the man questions to determine who he is. He only stared ahead, didn't respond. The captain of this flight comes out, sees this other pilot, and exclaims, "My God, it's Bob Loft."
Oh my God.
Supposedly the ghost of Bob Loft. And sightings began really early on of both Bob Loft and Don Repo's ghosts. There was a reflection of Repo's face in the galley of in an oven galley that was supposedly damaged. And this one is especially creepy, that supposedly an attendant opened an overhead compartment and saw the face of Bob Loft staring back at her.
Oh, I would shit a brick.
Yeah, that would be a quite shocking. I guess that would count as a head case in the overhead bin. So Don Repo was said to have been seen by an entire cockpit crew, that he was in the cockpit, and he reportedly warned them about a faulty electrical circuit, which was then discovered, found, and repaired. There was also Flight 903 flying from JFK to Mexico City, and this attendant, her name was Faye Merriweather, also saw the face of Don Repo. In this instance, it was said that she gathered her fellow attendants together and they all saw Don Repo's face, and he apparently warned them about a fire on the airplane. Now, while the plane did land safely in Mexico City, on the second leg of the trip, the plane's engine did start to malfunction. They were able to return safely back to the airport, but the story goes, had it continued on this journey, it would have not survived.
Whoa.
He was also, this was Repo, was also reported in the avionics bay of another L-1011 craft, and he was seen checking on the landing gear.
This is crazy.
So there's at least 20 sightings that have been documented. There was on different flights. Supposedly even an Eastern Airlines vice president encountered this. And this is somewhat mysterious. Can't quite verify this, but the story is that logbooks of certain Eastern flights where these sightings occurred even disappeared. Now, this happened late 1972 in the 1974 issue of Flight Safety Foundation newsletter, which I'm assuming was a pretty straightforward, sober trade publication.
For sure.
It was a trade publication, was already writing about these instances. And Robert J. Serling, who was actually Rod Serling's older brother, who was the creator of The Twilight Zone, so things are connecting. He wrote a book in 1980 called From the Captain to the Colonel, An Informal History of Eastern Airlines. And in that, it was said that a lot of these are myths and just bunk. However, the 1976 book, The Ghost of Flight 401, John G. Fuller's book, had interviews with Eastern employees who reported these sightings to supervisors, and those employees were then asked to go see a psychologist, and that the stories became so widespread that the management of Eastern Airlines told employees that if they were caught telling these stories, they would be fired.
Oh, that's bad management.
Well, I mean, it's also bad business to be talking about ghosts on your plane when you're also the company that had the plane that went down and killed 101 people. But
I guess.
So the thing that makes this so especially notable as a ghost story is, and this is something that Dan Aykroyd was really latching onto and was talking a lot about. He believes this. He buys into this story. So at some point it was said that Eastern Airlines, they were able to salvage parts from Flight 401, and that many of those same parts were then put onto aircraft such as Flight 318 or Aircraft 318, which was another in the fleet of Eastern Airlines, and that those planes that were carrying certain parts were connected to the hauntings.
Oh my God, it's like James Dean's car.
And that's like sort of this notion of psychometry, that energy could be attached to objects, inanimate objects, or that, certain psychics will hold up an object and get some sort of either communication or memory or reading off of an object. I do think that some of this is questionable because these sightings supposedly happened in early 1973. So the two reasons for that, you definitely wouldn't have salvaged parts on the plane that early. I don't think so.
Oh.
But I think that maybe either this story was so fresh in people's minds that it was just ripe for a ghost story, or if it was indeed a phantom, then perhaps these unresolved issues. I mean, we were talking about a sudden, traumatic, tragic demise. which is said to create a ghost like that.
Mm-hmm.
Also, maybe the unresolved issues. If, we're seeing Loft and Repo, these men that, it's got to be, if you have some awareness that you accidentally knocked deactivated the autopilot off, maybe that creates some sort of unresolved issue, and then
Mm-hmm.
you decide that you want to focus on helping others.
Oh, I totally
Could
buy
be.
that.
So anyhow, if the story of the salvage parts was called into question, but who knows? I don't know that the company would admit to it, but Eastern Airlines did cease operations in 1991, and this went on to be a very famous ghost story, modern ghost story, and even Bob Welch, who used to be in Fleetwood Mac, recorded a song titled "The Ghost of Flight 401."
Oh.
He recorded that in 1979. So in just 7 years, it had already reached the pop culture awareness. So
Wow.
interesting, creepy, and certainly one that I remember. This was a story that I heard bits and pieces of from a young age, both because of the Florida connection, but also this was sort of a new story, still newish story,
Mm-hmm.
So, so
Um,
there you have it.
do you want to hear something creepy?
Please.
So, listeners, as you know, Aaron and I don't plan or we pick a topic and then we just show up. So I wrote this week's mini-sode, and it is on an Eastern Airlines flight from Newark to Miami,
Oh,
but
well.
not your flight. But we don't know that.
Interesting.
Also plug
That
for the
is
Patreon.
synchronicity. Yeah. Synchronicity. It is worth noting that I want to be very sensitive to the people that were on Flight 401, both the families of the deceased and those who survived. There are survivors out there,
Mm-hmm.
and I would encourage looking up more about this story, about the stories of heroism
Mm-hmm.
that emerged from this, and people that were in a horrible situation and lost loved ones, but still managed to survive. And Miami Herald has done some great look at this story. They did one in 2018, and like I said, Flamingo magazine actually did a really solid one. So there are some good retrospectives out there. And just one interesting note that I find is the swamp water the swamp water and muck perhaps helped contain or contain wounds that prevented some people from bleeding to death. But on the other hand, there was so much gunk and microbes and everything in the water that it also exacerbated other wounds.
Wow.
So yeah,
Nature is a fickle beast.
indeed she is. But
Great. That was a great
so
story. I had never heard of that before.
thank you. Well, before we wrap things up, you want to talk some paranormal pop culture and what you're into this week?
Yeah, I think you're going to be super excited. I have started, The X-Files.
Oh, wow.
I know. I'm on episode 3. It's
You
great.
only have 297 episodes to go.
I have been told not to watch past season 6. That it's not good.
I don't necessarily, I
Okay.
don't agree with that. I think there's still some gems. The thing I would say is that with so many episodes, if I were to go back and rewatch, I don't even know if I would rewatch every episode.
Okay.
There are some good episode guides as far as what to really check out, and then maybe what you can kind of move along and not be too stressed out about.
Got it.
There's some good ones
Yeah, it's
after
great.
season
Their
6, though.
chemistry is very spicy off the bat.
That's only episode 3. You wait.
I know. That's what I'm excited for. I also love Gillian Anderson. She's in Sex Education now on Netflix, which is so good. And she looks even more beautiful as a blonde, but very good
I
acting.
First time I met her, and hell, every time I've met her, was very much a moment of just in awe of the overall personality
Yeah.
of Gillian, and she's someone that you're just like, I'm in love with you, and I'm going to turn into a puddle of goo, and not in a creepy way. It's just like she
Yeah.
just exudes like that energy.
Yeah.
So,
Is she in your hot tub?
is she in my hot tub? I don't know. I still haven't thought
I know
about the
you
hot tub.
haven't. Okay. What's your pop culture?
Mine is a new one called Lovecraft Country, which just premiered
I want to
on
watch it.
Sunday on HBO.
Yes. Did you like it?
Yeah, I really quite liked it. I've only seen the one episode, and it's set during Jim Crow era, and there's actually a lot of humor in it, but a lot of horror. And the notion is that the main character travels from the South to Chicago. He receives a letter from his estranged father, and he's on the case. He brings his uncle and his best friend with him on this cross country trip in search of the father, and they encounter creatures along the way. Again, only the first episode has played, but it's really focused on the lives of these black characters, and doesn't fall into that sort of white savior
Good.
type of narrative that you see in certain similar things, and hell, monsters. And what's kind of great is, so Lovecraft Country is obviously taken from H.P. Lovecraft, who was both a genius but also a horrible racist, and and this kind of takes ownership over some of that, and I think kind of I know if Lovecraft is turning in his grave or wherever he's spending his afterlife pissed off about a show based focusing on black people that taps into his creations, I'm all for it,
Yeah, that's great.
because he was a dick, but he wrote some really imaginative stuff. So yeah, it's the first episode I really enjoy, and it's not the same. It's going to be compared to Watchmen, I'm sure, which I
Okay.
loved. Watchmen was genius piece of work. It'll be compared to that, but it's not this. They are not the same. Has more science fiction elements. It's definitely lighter in tone despite some heavy elements, and it's fun. It's fun. So I would say check it out if you love monsters, if you love horror, if you just love checking out something new. And yeah, that's my pitch for Lovecraft Country on HBO Sundays.
Yeah, I want to watch it. I was going to watch it Sunday, but I'm gonna wait and watch it with someone, so it'll be fun.
Excellent. Well, I think we've come to the end of another NightMerica.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
If you like NightMerica, please consider supporting us at patreon.com/NightMerica and consider leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts. Give us a follow on social media and share this with your friends.
And if you'd like to share your paranormal stories, or even seek paranormal advice, which is for entertainment purposes only, email nightmericashow@gmail.com.